Welcome to State of Wellbeing, a podcast from South Dakota State University. The State of Wellbeing is a holistic well-being podcast with the goal of supporting the campus community as we strive to be a growing, high-performing, and healthy university.
Welcome back to another episode of the State of Wellbeing podcast. My name is Kevin Sackreiter. I'm the Executive Director for the Center for Professional Enrichment and Teaching Excellence here at South Dakota State University, and we're thrilled to have you join us as we embark on this extension of our podcast that was started by the SDSU Wellbeing team in January of 2024. Our goal being that this summer, we're able to focus our conversations on the well-being needs of our employees at South Dakota State University. And so today, I'm really excited for us to be able to have a conversation about employee burnout and obtaining balance within your professional life and personal life. And to help us with that conversation, Chanda Walter, Academic Advisor in Education and Human Sciences, is here to talk with us today. Welcome, Chanda.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm happy to be here. As Kevin said, I'm an academic advisor here at South Dakota State University. I've been employed here on campus for over 15 years, and I work within the College of Education and Human Sciences. In the last few years, I've been pretty involved with our national organization with NACADA on the Wellbeing and Advisor Retention Committee. And I'm also serving now currently on the mental health and well-being team here at SDSU.
That's one of the groups on campus that I really enjoy being a part of as well. I think it's been really beneficial for me personally to reflect on a lot of those conversations, but to just the impact that group is able to have on our campus community is really powerful. And so we've had a chance to talk a little bit about our conversation prior to today, and I know we had some areas we really wanted to make sure we talked about. And so one of those being the area of and the concept of compassion fatigue. And so I was wondering if you could discuss with us what the concept of compassion fatigue is, and then maybe we could enter into a discussion about challenges that employees face when this occurs.
Absolutely. Compassion fatigue is our negative aspects of working, and this can happen at an individual level or as an organization. This is basically generalized stress and having difficulty concentrating on your daily tasks while you're at work. As an organization, though, this could be, again, not completing tasks and maybe not being flexible, but just, having those feelings of anxiety, stress, poor concentration, maybe you're not coming into work daily like you should, and that really affects not only yourself but your team and your organization.
So on the other end of compassion fatigue, I know as we've talked, we've discussed the idea of compassion satisfaction as well, and I'm wondering if you could maybe talk a little bit about the value that you feel employees feel when they experience that concept of compassion satisfaction.
Yes, that's the great part of our work, is feeling the positive aspects of our work. It's that pleasure and satisfaction of what you've done throughout the day. When you have that social support and you share wins with your team, that I think is the most important piece of compassion and satisfaction.
So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. We haven't really talked through some of this conversation, but I'm wondering if you have any examples from your professional work life related to either compassion fatigue or compassion satisfaction that you'd be willing to share with us to help our listeners get a better idea of what those concepts mean.
Yeah, on both ends. When I start feeling a little bit of that compassion fatigue, I know I need to tell myself it's time to set up boundaries and take time for myself and just really take a look at what I'm doing during my work day. And when I start having those triggers, I need to really figure out what needs to be changed. And I'm the only person that can change it, right? Mm-hmm. When I'm feeling satisfied, though, at work, again, I'm, happy with what I did throughout the day. I know I did my best. It's very helpful when you do have a supportive team that checks in with you, a supervisor that wants to know what you need to perform at your best. And so having those team members to share wins is really helpful. Sometimes during our committee meetings or advisor meetings what's really cool is we all have an opportunity to share some wins or some good things that have happened before we start that meeting, and just it helps you remind yourself that we're all doing good things here on campus.
I think I experienced something similar. I had a conversation with someone the other day about how much more satisfaction I get out of my work experience when I get to meet with people and see people and have that that interpersonal interaction with people throughout the day. But if I have to sit at a Zoom meeting all day and do Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting, that can be very frustrating, and I leave not feeling great all the time when I don't have those interpersonal connections. So I feel like I get some kind of satisfaction from that approach within my workday as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So just taking those times throughout the day to check in with others and just remember all the positive things you're doing and not be so hard on yourself.
Right. I think on the fatigue side of things, I've had to learn to say no and set those boundaries sometimes, because I think I'm notorious for saying yes to every request that comes across the board, and it gets me in trouble sometimes where I have to remind myself that, you know what, no, it's okay to say no, or I don't have the capacity for this, and I feel better about things too when I force myself to do that.
Yes, we all know what we can handle and what we can't,
Right.
and we know when we have too much on our plate. You can tell, you can feel those aspects, which again leads to compassion fatigue.
Right. And it's okay to know that you've reached your capacity, and it's okay to know that you can't take anything more on, and to express that. I think that's really important for people to. I don't think we always feel like it's okay to say no within our work life and our work environment.
Absolutely.
So I guess we kind of ventured into another area that I wanted to talk about, and that relates to boundaries. And if we've talked about this, I apologize, but I think there's more to this conversation. And so why do you feel like boundaries are important, and how do you go about setting them? I know I just said it's really hard to say no. Sometimes you feel pressure and expectations, but it's okay to say no too. So how do you go about setting them? Why are they important? Just kind of that whole world of boundaries.
Boundaries are so important, and the longer I've worked here on campus, the more I realize it. Boundaries are guidelines used to set expectations, responsibilities, and limits for yourself and ourselves. Some of the boundaries that I try to manage are definitely prioritizing what needs to be done. Time management is a big piece, and communication. I think those are the big ones. Creating those built-in breaks, not being accessible 24/7. When you leave work at 5 o'clock, you need to tune off or shut off. Not check your email when you get home. You have to have that work-life balance. I don't think anything is emergent normally, so things can usually be figured out or taken care of that next day. So just putting in those breaks during your day to take 10 minutes to get up and walk around, get a drink, get some fresh air, go talk to a coworker and see how their day is going, and keep encouraging everyone, and prioritizing what needs to be done and what can wait. If you didn't get everything done at the end of the day or didn't get all those emails checked, prioritize that next morning, the ones that are most important, and go from there.
I love that. I know one of the boundaries I've had to set in my world relates to my phone, and changing the settings so that my email doesn't just automatically update and that number just keeps growing, but instead I have to actually click on the email button and then it will update. But I was feeling so much pressure and stress when I'd see that email number just going up and up and up on its own. Changing that alleviate a lot of that pressure. It's only there if I see it now or want to see it now, and that's been really helpful for me.
Yes. I have personally never had my email connected to my cell phone, and I'm proud of that. It's a huge boundary for me. And I do think that could cause a lot of anxiety, knowing all the emails coming in and having those on your phone. So I just have never done that, and I encourage you all to try not having your email sent to your phone. It's very uplifting. It's nice just to break that balance.
I agree. And I think the other thing that I've had, and not that we want to go down Kevin's boundaries too deeply, but talking to my to my supervisors when I'm away on annual leave, or I'm taking care of a sick kid and I'm using that time that I have within the system, knowing that it's okay that I'm focusing on my annual leave or focusing on my sick child or whatever the case may be, and not feeling pressure to have to be in both places at the same time.
Absolutely, yes.
So I guess along that a transition, I've talked to my supervisors about certain things, and there's a level of self-advocacy there, knowing what I need within those situations. And so why is it important to self-advocate, and how does an employee go about doing that within the institution?
Self-advocacy is really what it's all about. You need to talk to your own self, your coworkers, the students we're working with, your family and friends. You need to check in with others and make others aware of your schedule. And I feel like, with students, you can remind them to take care of themselves as well. But with your own self and checking in with others, you can let them know what your day maybe looks like. You can let your coworkers say, hey, I'm going to be in meetings all morning, so if you don't see me in my office, that's where I'm at. Or letting family know that there's going to be times of the year that are busier than others. So, I might be running a little later than normal during our busier time, but then there's going to be times in the school year it's not as busy. And so when you have those communications with all your support system, I think that really helps, so they understand where you're coming from. And then most importantly is having those conversations with your supervisor, letting them know about your needs and stressors. If you don't tell your supervisor what you need, then the supervisor isn't going to know.
Right.
And I am lucky enough to have a very wonderful supervisor that cares about our self-care and our wellness. And so hopefully we can just keep promoting other supervisors here on campus to talk to their workers and ask what they need.
I think I'd like to explore that conversation point a little bit more, because I think that's really an important area for us to talk about, and maybe provide some tips or tools to folks who are in supervisor roles. And specifically, is there advice that you would give to supervisors for more proactively addressing employee burnout within their units? Thoughts that you might have on that conversation point?
I feel like the most important is just, as a supervisor, just check in with your employees periodically. I know we are all very, very busy. Our lives are busy. But if you can just take time once in a while to ask, what they can do to support their employee wellness, I think that's huge. And I think that as a employee makes the employee feel valued when the supervisor is actually asking and cares about that. If you haven't had a chance to talk to your supervisor, maybe if you have a team meeting, you guys can have a discussion about wellness and self-care at your meetings, or go in and talk to your supervisor if their supervisor has an open door policy. But hopefully we can just get the word out that it's okay to talk about this, and it's so important for us to be able to have that healthy boundary and those self-care needs so we can live a professional quality of life.
I love that suggestion of making the unit's well-being a conversation point within a meeting, or a department meeting. I think that's a great idea. The other resource that I'll just promote is the first episode of this podcast this summer. We had Linda Van Manen come in and talk about the Employee Assistance Program and how supervisors could use that as a tool to help support their employees as well. And so just a quick promotion opportunity for me within the podcast, that episode 1 does talk about that employee assistance program as well. And so we're getting close to wrapping up. Our time's gone really fast today. But do you have any final thoughts related to the concept of employee burnout, whether it be compassion fatigue, compassion satisfaction, that you might want to kind of wrap us up with today?
Again, I just feel like those lines of communication are so important. Hopefully you have a group of team members or coworkers that you work with that are also supportive, that will take time to listen, and just remember your boundaries are so important, and you're the only one that can set those. So just take time, look at your day, and take time for yourself.
That's a great message for us to wrap up with today. And so, Chanda, I want to thank you. Chanda Walter, Academic Advisor in Education and Human Sciences, was our guest today on the State of Wellbeing podcast. And I would just encourage all of you to really prioritize yourself, setting those boundaries, understanding what you need as an employee and as a person within the institution that is South Dakota State University. And so thank you for joining us on today's episode of the State of Wellbeing podcast.
Thank you for listening to this episode of State of Wellbeing, a podcast from South Dakota State University. This podcast is brought to you by the Mental Wellbeing Team and SD State Health.